Welcome to Your Family's Health, the program that focuses on healthcare issues with unique and different modalities for taking charge of your health today. Experts talk weekly with our continuing roster of guests from around the country and right here in Nassau County to keep you up to date on the latest health issues and trends. Take care of your mind, body, and soul. Spend the next half hour with the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC, and get on the journey to better health.
Hello and welcome to Your Family's Health. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College. And today we're going to get some practical advice to help everyone stay healthy during this cold and flu season, especially in the light of the COVID-19 pandemic. Our guest today is Dr. Ken Redcross, the author of Bond, The 4 Cornerstones of a Lasting and Caring Relationship with Your Doctor, and founder of Redcross Concierge, a personalized medical practice designed to enhance the patient-doctor relationship. Dr. Redcross, welcome to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. Welcome.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Jeanine. It's wonderful to be here with you today. Thank you so much for having me on.
You're very welcome. So I hope you're doing well in light of the COVID pandemic. Has this virus personally affected you?
Well, I've been extremely blessed so far. You know, in my practice being a concierge physician, what I do, Dr. Jeanine, is I make house calls. So I've seen a lot of COVID patients in their home and so forth since March. But once again, I've been very blessed and I've been able to stay out of harm's way.
So tell me, why are colds and the flu more prevalent in the winter months?
Well, you have to think about what's happening as far as in the air and the nature of the air. In those cold climates, that's when the flu vaccine really propagates quite well. But then, you know, the flu sort of tailors off towards, believe it or not, it can go all the way out into May. But think about June, July, and those months. There's a lot more humidity in the air. So those droplets are in the air, but they drop to the ground. They're not able to really propagate in the air where it gets a lot of us in that way. So that's the reason why each and every year we know when influenza in particular is coming. And now it's only complicated by that of the coronavirus.
So talk to me about, does the flu season, can we expect more of incidences of the COVID-19 because it's the flu season? Is there a correlation between the two?
Well, look, there are two different viruses. So I think the main correlation is that they're both respiratory viruses. The other thing is, which is a good thing, is that us practicing social distancing, wearing masks, and practicing hand hygiene is going to be incredibly beneficial for both. But this is great because this is the first flu season when obviously we've done these things. So it's important to kind of recognize the differences and the symptoms, but it's also important to recognize that if we do what we're supposed to do for the coronavirus, it should also make a big difference in the flu virus as well.
Great. So what are some things we can do to keep our bodies healthy during the cold and flu season? You kind of mentioned it with, the masks that we're having to wear with the COVID pandemic. But what else can we do to keep our bodies healthy?
Well, look, in addition to that, there's really 3 other things that are quite important, a whole bunch of them, but definitely 3. Number 1, it's about nutrition. Nutrition is so important. It's always important, but especially during the cold and flu season, because you want to put whole foods, you want to give yourself fuel to be able to fight off some of these germs that we get during this time of year. The second thing is sleep. You know, sleep is such an interesting thing when you talk about it because as Americans, we wear it as a badge of honor almost, like less sleep means that you can be more productive. But I say it's just the opposite. We're supposed to be getting 7.5 minutes of sleep, and we know that it is intimately involved with our immune system when we get the right amount of sleep. And then last but not least, exercise plays a big part. We know about endorphins, which make us feel good after exercise, but a lot of us don't recognize the benefits that exercise has, especially on the immune system and the cells that are released into our bodies when we're exercising as well, which also helps us fight infections.
So I know you said 7.5 hours of sleep. Wow, that's a lot of sleep for a lot of Americans who work a full-time job and now with the COVID pandemic probably have increased anxiety as it relates to the pandemic and all that it comes with it. So what would you say is ways that we can reduce the downtime that we have when we are sick? What are some ways that we can, if we are sick, lessen the times that we are sick?
Well, I'll tell you one thing that's interesting. So I trained in Columbia Presbyterian here in the city many moons ago. So I'm a Western trained physician, but some of the better things that I really talk to patients about are homeopathic medications that are right over the counter that don't require any prescription, which is my goal, never to have to use my prescription pad. So Dr. Jeanine, when I have patients call me, whether it be for body aches, fever, or chills, the flu-like symptoms, I talk to them about a homeopathic remedy called oscillococcinum. Now, oscillococcinum is important for me for a couple of reasons as a practicing physician. Number one, I don't have to worry about it necessarily interacting with other medications that I have the patient on, nor do I have to worry about it making them drowsy while they're still trying to work and be productive. As you mentioned during this pandemic, a lot of our hours are longer than ever. The other thing is when they get cold symptoms, which is much different than the flu, I can then offer them cold calm, which is another homeopathic remedy that's over the counter. And in a lot of the neighborhood pharmacies that we talk about, whether it be CVS or Rite Aid or Walgreens, the point is these are things that we can do to jump on early and, to your point, really decrease that downtime that we actually, really get when we come down with something like a cold or the flu.
So what about the effects of other natural remedies like zinc and echinacea and vitamin C? Do you also use those in combination with those that you mentioned?
I do actually, but you know what I step to? So it depends. So if I'm dealing with a person, so I'm an internist, everyone, but I still have my patients, meaning I see adults, but also we also kind of help them with their children with advice. So for instance, if they got the cold symptoms, when I mentioned cold calm, that's for kids 6 months of age and older, and the oscillococcinum are for kids 2 years of age and older and adults. So that helps me there. Then I talk about vitamin D, and the reason why is because vitamin D is also good for adults and children. Vitamin D is incredibly important. Mm-hmm. Vitamin D affects up to 2,000 genes in our body. That's how important it is. And we also recognize that with vitamin D, minorities in particular, especially here in the United States, but really in the world, are incredibly low in vitamin D. And that's something that we want to make sure that we change because of the benefits that we see with the immune system, which is important as we talk about the coronavirus that we're all dealing with now. Zinc is great as well, as you mentioned, because zinc will help at the mucous membrane level. And there's been a lot of great studies on what that does for your immune system as well. Echinacea has an interesting story, as that there's kind of some back and forth data of whether it's as important a part of your regimen. But if you had to pin me down and talk about the things that are most important, it would by far be the homeopathic remedies, cold calm, oscillococcinum, vitamin D, zinc, and I would also throw in fish oil as well, Dr. Jeanine.
Interesting. So all of these natural remedies, where can I find them? Would it be in the health food store? Where should I go?
Well, see, that's the good part, that we're all so busy. We're all kind of trapped in our homes or working from home, and so we can't do difficult, right? So therefore, you can go to your neighborhood pharmacies. I mentioned, you're right, some of the Whole Foods is a great place. There's Rite Aid. There's a lot of CVS's around me. I'm in New York. Target, Walgreens. So the good thing is they're everywhere. So the good thing is, as you hear this today, you're gonna tell yourself when you walk in the stores, you're gonna see these on the shelves, and all of a sudden you're gonna say, "Oh my gosh, they've been here the whole time, but I never knew about it."
So what point should someone consider going to see the doctor during this? They're getting the symptoms of the cold. What point should I say, okay, this is definitely, I need to go and make an appointment with the doctor?
Yeah, that's a great question. I usually tell everyone that window is 48 hours for me. So when you talk to any of my patients, they'll say, Dr. Redcross says that 48 hours is a good enough time to know whether you're going this portion of the fork in the road that you're getting better, or the other fork in the road saying, I'm really not getting better, and in fact, I feel worse. That 48-hour window is a great one for me to be able to assess and determine where we need to go from there.
You're listening to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard, and today we're getting some practical advice to help everyone stay healthy during this cold and flu season, especially in light of the COVID COVID-19 pandemic. Our guest today is Dr. Ken Redcross, the author of Bond, the 4 Cornerstones of a Lasting and Caring Relationship with Your Doctor, and founder of Redcross Concierge, a personal medical practice designed to enhance the patient-doctor relationship. So, Dr. Ken, tell me, can I, as, just an everyday layperson, obviously everyone is not in the medical field, but can I distinguish between a common cold, an allergy, and COVID? Mm-hmm. How do I make the distinction? I'm home and I start feeling symptomatic and I really don't know what's going on. How do I make that distinction, or should I?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, that's a great question, because as you deal with, first, before COVID came, what were we dealing with? We were thinking either cold symptoms or flu-like symptoms. Flu-like symptoms are like you literally felt like you got hit by a truck. I mean, it's the body aches, it's the chills, usually a fever. But when we dial back and we look at a cold is very different. A cold, we kind of go about our day, even though we may be sneezing, we may have some nasal congestion, but we plow through. The flu doesn't allow you to do that. Now, fast forward to where we are today with the coronavirus, and that's totally different in that, yes, there's some things that can look a little bit like the flu, but it's those high spike in temperatures and the shortness of breath, which is so devastating and concerning when you see a lot of the patients who have the coronavirus who really become ill, and we hear a lot of talk of respirators and that sort of thing. So believe me, if you have a coronavirus and you really feel like things are going that direction, it usually declares itself. Kind of early. That's what that 48-hour window is so important. So if some of the things we talked about today, some of the homeopathic things in the first 24 to 48 hours, and you're better, great. If you're not where you need to go, that's the reason for that call, so that we can have a discussion for me to say, have you had any exposure to anyone with the coronavirus? Have you been near anyone? Have you not been wearing your mask? Those sort of things, which allow me some time to kind of dig in a little bit deeper as to what's going on, to kind of sift through what may be going on.
So what do you say to people who refuse to take the flu shot because of the claim that they'll get sick? What is your feeling on that?
Right. So I'll let everyone know. So as I mentioned, I am in fact Western trained, open to alternative ways of healing. So I'll tell you, I don't necessarily just indiscriminately sign on for the flu vaccine each and every year. But I will tell you that this is a year that you need to definitely talk to your doctor, who I bet would probably agree that this is a year not to kind of fool around as far as dealing with the flu itself, while the coronavirus is also circulating. I know people have some strong views, and I've been there before too. The H1N1 year, which is 2001, was not a year that I was necessarily recommending the flu vaccine either, because it was a poor vaccine. There wasn't as much efficacy. So I'll tell you, it's a personal decision. It's a decision you have to have with your doc, but I will say once again, this is not the year that I want anybody close to me or anyone listening to this show to be exposed to influenza and have to battle that and possibly have an exposure to the coronavirus as well.
So when you're talking about preventing the common cold or preventing a flu, have you met or have your patient population who have been on these herbal remedies been, I guess, free of cold or flu? Is there a report or any studies showing that, or in your practice, have you seen that?
Yeah, look, I've seen it also clinically, and there's a lot of information, especially when you have your patients come in, and that's what I mentioned. Like, for instance, that longer one, the psilococcinum, that people kind of joke about because it's such a long name. The point is that once you start early when those symptoms come, and once again, as another magic, 24 to 48 hours, your symptoms get better and sometimes completely go away. And that's the plan. That's what we want to have happen. We want to be able to have something at home, kind of in our toolkit, when our loved ones get sick quickly, or you have little kids that get sick quickly, and you want to provide something from them that can make a big difference. That's when something like homeopathy, that's when some of the herbals and things that we're talking become incredibly important. You may recall, many, many years ago, there wasn't even a talk about a lot of these alternative ways of healing. And it's only come into vogue lately as patients have started to realize that there are alternative ways to heal. There's other ways to get better. Now, I'm the type that mixes both. I think there is definitely some benefit, obviously, in synergy of, things that, as I like to say, closer to the earth with more Western medications, but I think they should work together. I don't think they should be adversaries.
Why do you think people need to get a shot of the immunization, flu immunization every year, annually? Why does it not last beyond why is it recommended annually versus biannually, the shot?
So yeah, everyone. So influenza is a very strange virus. You can call it maybe even a smart virus because it's able to mutate. So therefore, we usually recognize that from down in Australia, it usually starts there and sweeps in a pattern that we're very familiar with through Asia and then over to us. That familiarity allows us to kind of figure out what strains are going to be the most virulent, or in other words, which strains are going to be the most deadly. And so it allows us to try to get a vaccine to get maybe those top 2 or 3 or 4 strains when you hear a trivalent or a quadrivalent vaccine. So we try to make sure we peg it and we try to get the right thing. It doesn't mean if you get the flu shot that you can't get a different strain of flu. So that's when people will say, oh, this flu shot made me sick. Well, you may have gotten another strain of the flu that wasn't covered. But the point is that the flu shot has had some studies to show that if you do get the flu, it definitely makes it less severe. And so once again, I'm not saying the flu shot is for everyone or even me as a provider that each and every year I have, recommended that sort of thing. But we do know that, once again, this is not a year to kind of play with that. And because the influenza virus is able to shift and change itself, that's why each and every year, Dr. Jeanine, that we need to see what virus is coming and what did it do to change itself this time. And so we have to get ready each and every year and kind of batten down the hatches a bit. So that's why you need an annual flu shot that isn't always the same.
So tell us about the Redcross Concierge. What is the company that you created? Tell me what that's all about.
So sure. So I'm a concierge physician. Maybe some of you have heard of that, but it's very similar to a concierge at a hotel. The concierge at the hotel tells you the best restaurants to go to, the best theaters. The point is that I try to make sure that I provide the best in a patient-doctor relationship and interaction. So therefore, you're not stuck with the 7.5 minutes, which is the national average that a patient gets with their doctor now. With me, I may be with the patient for an hour and a half, or meet them at their home, which is what I typically do, is I make house calls throughout the city or what have you. It also allows me to kind of set up another arm of what I do, which is what I call strategic advice. And I have people in different countries and all over to where they have their own doctors, but they want that advice for us to come back and say, this is what happened at the doctor's office. Does this make sense? What should I order? What does this lab test mean? Things that other doctors in a busier practice are unable to sit down and take time to do. And I've been fortunate and blessed enough to be able to carve out kind of a unique way to deliver care to patients and give them what I think they deserve.
That sounds awesome. So do you at all ever collaborate with the patient's primary physician, or do you just give advice based upon what the patient is telling you? How does that work?
Oh, gosh. So it depends. So those 3 ways I either do it. So in Redcross Concierge, I'll either do it as far as making house calls, or I'll take over the whole case and be the primary. And lots of times what happens is that I'm helping a person who has older parents and kids of their own and their own career, and they need support for their parents who aren't doing well. I take over the entire case. But for those who are in other areas, whether it be the one I have in Canada or in Germany, and they have their own doctors, that's the advice piece. And you're right. That's what I usually do. I call the team and kind of find out a little bit of what's going on to say, the patient called me. I'm a dear friend. I'm a kind of a consultant that helps out. What do you think? What was your thought here? How can we do this together, or that sort of thing? So it's a very advisory role, but I love it because, as I like to say, it allows me to get into the soul of the patient that way. So it allows for all of that sharing and those things that are so important for optimal health.
So how is this business model different from the telehealth that you hear about when patients are able to call in to a healthcare provider? How does it differ, or does it?
Well, so it's got some great kind of cross reacting in a little bit, because what can happen is that I also can do that. We can also do something that is a kind of a HIPAA compliant platform like they do when you do the telehealth. For me, There's nothing better when possible here in New York when I can be in the space of the patient. I mean, there's something to be said by a video call, and that's great. That's great. That's what we have, especially with COVID. And I think that's a beautiful thing that has really happened. But there's nothing better than me going to see a patient like I have in the city before who has asthma, isn't getting better, for me to go to her home and see that she has 3 dogs, a cat, and a parakeet.
Yeah.
For me to understand why her asthma may not be getting better, which I wouldn't necessarily have gotten from a video call. So you're right. So they kind of they cross each other to where they can really be good. But for me, it's that personal touch. And I think that really matters a lot for health and healing, just to get into the spirit of the patient.
So this sort of sounds like an old-fashioned way to practice medicine, where house calls are now back into with the Red Cross Concierge, where you're knocking on the door, actually meeting the patient face to face. Is that what it looks like?
Oh, absolutely. I even have, it's funny, I'm walking in the city, I have my little black bag, and people are like, is that thing got anything in it? Like, oh, yeah, my stethoscope's here. You know, so it's very cool. But yeah, I'm a little bit of a throwback.
Interesting. You're listening to Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard, and today we're getting some practical advice to help everyone stay healthy during this cold and flu season, especially in the light of the COVID-19 pandemic. With our guest, Dr. Ken Redcross, the author of Bond, the 4 Cornerstones of a Lasting and Caring Relationship with Your Doctor, and founder of Redcross Concierge, a personalized medical practice designed to enhance the patient-doctor relationship. So, doctor, can you have both the flu and COVID-19 at the same time?
Well, you can, and that's my worry, Dr. Jeanine, because if you have both at the same time, there's a potential for some really serious problems. You know, the number one complication of influenza in and of itself is pneumonia. And then you see everything that the coronavirus has been doing as far as to the lung tissues and to other parts of the body as well. So that is a combination that I don't want to have anyone go through. Yeah. So that's why, so yes, you can have both, but that would really, really concern me if that were the case.
Now, are you seeing, is most of your population the older adult?
Yes, because I'm an internist. So I usually will drop down to about 15 years of age, which is the adolescent age.
Okay.
And so since I see adults, I usually will go down to them because they're pretty much becoming young adults and they want to see an adult doctor by that time. So yes, and then I do have those patients of mine who have other children, and I'm able to provide advice for them as well.
So if a person wanted to get in contact with you, what is the easiest way to do so?
Well, my website is drkenredcross.com. Even on the social media platforms, it's Dr. Ken Redcross, whether that's Instagram or Facebook or Twitter or whichever ones that may be out there. And that's an easy way to kind of reach out, and I meet so many people that way, so I always enjoy that. So
if you could, what is one of the things that you want to leave with the audience when it comes down to cold and flu season?
Well, the main thing I want you to do is I want to make sure that you take control of your health, and that's by making sure you're eating right, that you're getting rest, and that you're exercising your body and also your mind as well, however you can, to reduce stress. Whether that's, meditation or whatever that is for you, I want you to do that. And then I also want you to understand that there are some things right over the counter in your neighborhood pharmacies, your Rite Aids, your CVS's, your Targets, that can help you if you really feel like you're coming down with a cold, whether it be through cold calm or if you're feeling like you have a little bit more, like body aches and chills and fever, where oscillococcinum can make a big difference. So make sure you look at other alternatives that can be helpful. And then within that 48-hour window, you need to let your doctor know what you're taking, and more importantly, let your doctor know what your symptoms are as well, and recognize that your health is important and you need to make sure you take control of it, and your doctor should feel like a member of your family. That's the big take home.
I'm going to ask you a funny question, and this is an old saying.
Sure.
Feed a cold, starve a fever. Is there any truth to it?
Mm-hmm. I will tell you, I sign up to that all the time, because that's exactly, that's grandma's tale.
Yeah, that's what grandma says. The chicken soup.
I would never argue with grandma. And she's right there with chicken noodle soup. A lot
That's
of bone
right.
broth, which is what chicken noodle soup is, and that's big time stuff. So always stick with grandma. You never go wrong.
You can't go wrong with grandma. You really cannot. Don't put grandma down because that broth is fluid, right? And that protein in that chicken soup,
Absolutely.
I guess.
And not only, and don't forget the heat of the broth helps to also open up your nasal passageways also. So it does so many things.
Well, thank you for being here with us today, Dr. Ken Redcross, the author of Bond, the 4 Cornerstones of a Lasting and Caring Relationship with Your Doctor, and founder of Redcross Concierge. We hope you stay safe and continue to do the great work. And thank you so much for being a guest today. This is Dr. Jeanine Cook-Garard from the nursing department here at Nassau Community College. And we want to thank you for listening to this week's edition of Your Family's Health.
We'd like to get your feedback on your family's health. Send your comments by emailing them to whpc@ncc.edu. Podcasts of today's show are available on iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. This program was produced at the studios of Nassau Community College in cooperation with the Nursing Department. Join us next week for another edition of Your Family's Health on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
145 over 92.
180 over 111.
182 over 100. And I had a heart attack and a cardiac arrest. And then a stroke.
Your blood pressure numbers could change your life.
A lot of people don't understand, including myself, I didn't, now I do, the impact of having a stroke.
My memory is shot.
When I woke up, I couldn't speak.
Lowering your high blood pressure could save you from a heart attack or stroke. If you've stopped your treatment plan, restart it or talk to your doctor about creating one that works better for you. Start taking the right steps at manageyourbp.org.
It's a new life, but I'm going to make it better. I'm coming back. Ask your doctor, check your blood pressure.
Brought to you by the American Heart Association, American Medical Association, and the Ad Council.
To some people, the sound of a baby babbling doesn't mean much. But that's not necessarily true. By 6 months, they're combining vowels and consonants. By 9 months, they're trying out different kinds of sounds. And by 12 months, their babbling is beginning to take on some meaning. Especially if there's no babbling at all. Little to no babbling by 12 months or later is just one of the possible signs of autism in children. Early screening and intervention can make a lifetime of difference and unlock a world of possibilities. Take the first step at autismspeaks.org. A public service announcement brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.